Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh last week reaffirmed India's commitment to inclusive and transparent global security at the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation Meet in Moscow. Addressing the combined meeting of defence ministers of the SCO Collective Security Treaty Organisation and Commonwealth of Independent States, member states in Moscow, the defence minister said India is committed to the evolution of a global security architecture which will be open, transparent, inclusive, rules-based and anchored in international laws. Rajnath Singh stressed on the need for a climate of trust and cooperation, non-aggression, respect for international rules and norms for peace and security in the SCO region. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the SCO Defence Ministers Meet. Joining me on the program today are Lucy Kotoch, Director, India Foundation, Ashok Sajjanhar, former Ambassador, and Tej Pratap Singh, Professor, Department of International Politics, Banaras Hindu University. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, Ambassador, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's understand the real key takeaways as far as the SCO Defence Ministers Summit or Meet was concerned.
You know, basically, as far as India is concerned, it's a very important forum. In fact, the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation, which India joined in 2017, is a very important platform for India because as the viewers would know, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established in 2001, so it's going to celebrate, mark 2 decades of its existence. And it was the precursor of Shanghai Cooperation Organization was the Shanghai 5, which was formed in 1996, basically after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, to settle borders between China and all these newly emerged countries that had come up. So it was the Russian Federation, it was Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. So once the borders were more or less settled in 1996, the Shanghai 5 was formed. And then in 2001, it was decided also to involve, to include Uzbekistan, and that is how the Shanghai Cooperation Organization was established with the headquarters in Beijing. So India became a member, an observer to this organization in 2005, and we got membership of that in 2017. So it was a long and patient wait for India to become a member of this organization, but it's a very significant organization because it is straddles across much of Eurasia. It has membership of Russia, China, 4 of the Central Asian countries, and India and Pakistan. So in terms of area, it is huge. In terms of population, it represents more than 40% of the world population. In terms of GDP, it represents more than 23-24%. So it's a very important organization, and these meetings that take place of the Defence Ministers meeting, these are all annual meetings that take place, and the visit of Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh to this meeting is very significant. We would note that Raksha Mantri was also in Moscow just about 2 months ago in June, when again at the invitation of the Russian Federation to mark the 75th anniversary of the victory of Soviet Union at that time over the Nazi forces. So the fact that Raksha Mantri decided to go there again within a span of 2 months plus, number one, it underscores and emphasizes the importance that India attaches to its relations with Russia. And there were very many bilateral discussions held. There were, of course, what you have just read out in terms of the message that Raksha Mantri sent out, without mentioning any country's name, but definitely referring very, very clearly, number one, to the aggression that we are facing on our northern borders, and also to the challenges of terrorism that India is facing and the whole world is facing, and where it is emanating from, that I think all of us know. So I think both on the bilateral front as well as on the regional front, this was an important visit and helped to project our interests and take them forward.
Absolutely. General, let me bring you to the picture now. The ambassador brought up the issue of terror. How big a problem is terror, and how has it been looked at by the SCO? How much of a concern is it to the other SCO members?
Now, you see, when the SCO was founded, one of the focus area was actually terrorism. They had very specifically stated in their charter that they're looking into regional security issues, which one of the focus areas was terrorism. The second focus area was ethnic separatism, and the third was religious extremism. And these were the actual concerns of the Central Asian republics at that time. And because it was their concern, and because they are bordering Russia, it became Russia's concern too. These concerns still remain. Now, when we are looking at the way the SCO has really been formulated, who are the members? We have China and Pakistan there. Now, Pakistan, everybody knows, is actually the state sponsor of terror. And if any terrorist incident which takes place anywhere in the world, somewhere a Pakistani link emerges. Now, China is supporting Pakistan because it uses Pakistan as a hedge, you can say, against India, or rather it uses Pakistan to support a proxy war against India. So to that extent, I think when we are looking at the SCO and its charter on terrorism, I think it gets diluted to a very great extent because the focus on Pakistan gets shifted. The second focus area, as far as the SCO was concerned on terrorism, was really Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan still remains a prime concern because till such time as Afghanistan stabilizes, the threat of radicalization seeping from Afghanistan onto the Central Asian republics is very large and very real. Now, here too, if you look at the primacy of the role which Pakistan plays in supporting organizations like the Afghan Taliban, the Haqqani Network, and all the other organizations which you can think of, and also see now the Chinese interest within Afghanistan, I do not think that that we are really going to come to any solution with respect to getting stability in Afghanistan. But having said that, I still think, as Ambassador Sajjanar said, it is a very important forum to have because sans this forum, India loses a voice. Now, had it not been for the forum, if India was not present in this particular forum, then we would not be able to project our view or to at least ensure that anti-India sentiments do not prevail, with a very strong presence of China, because China is a very significant player as a founding member. And with Pakistan also coming in, I think it is important that India is a player there. Hopefully, in due course of time, both Iran and Afghanistan will too become permanent members. And then perhaps we can take forward other dialogues and promote the security dialogue even further.
All right, general points taken. Now let me take the points that you're making forward with TP Singh now. So, Professor, how has the threat perception really changed in the world as well? This is something that that the defense minister spoke about. He spoke about how there are new threats now. So, what are these new threats, and how do we deal with them?
Yeah, threat perceptions have changed over the years. Earlier, the threat was coming from the state. Now, non-state actors' threat is more dangerous than these threats coming from the state. And as my previous speakers, Ambassador and General, discussed in detail about the terrorism. So, terrorism is one kind of threat perpetrated by the non-state actors. But there are other threats also. And that is also posing existential threat. That another threat is the threat coming from the climate change, global warming, etc. But here, while talking about the new threat, so now the cyber security, the cyber threat has emerged as another threat, and the SCO has been discussing about the cooperation to tackle with this cyber threat. And in this, this cyber is being used for fomenting religious terrorism, the extremism, and etc. The three things which journal described: the religious, ethnic conflict, the religious extremism, and terrorism. So here, for fomenting all these, social media, this cyber word is being used. So this is another threat. Apart from these, we have the threat coming from small arms proliferation, because nobody is dying from atomic weapons, nuclear weapons, etc., and more people are dying from the small weapons. So, so this small arms proliferation is another threat. the drug trafficking, the human trafficking. So there are various kinds of non-traditional security threat is facing this world, and these non-traditional security threats are more dangerous than the security threat coming from the other state. While talking about how to deal with this thing, so the regional mechanism, the global mechanism, these can be useful in fighting against these kind of non-traditional threat to security. And here, because these regional mechanism, this global mechanism, the institutions of global governance, regional governance, and so Shanghai Cooperation Organization is one of them. So these can be used for dealing with these new threats coming from non-state actors. And here, Shanghai Cooperation Organization has also created a regional anti-terrorism structure. So that is also a useful instrument created by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And the main purpose is to fight against these new threats coming to the different states. So these are the transnational threat, and these transnational threat can be dealt with transnational cooperation. And for this, the Shanghai Cooperation can be a useful mechanism in fighting against this new threat to the international community.
Right. Okay. Points taken and well elaborated, really, as far as new threats are concerned and how to deal with them. Now, Ambassador, I'm going to go back to a point that the General was making, about Afghanistan and how three of the major members of the SCO have major stakes in Afghanistan as well. And, how is it going to play out there? And are these, individual issues, do they really play out on the larger multilateral scale?
I think it's an excellent question, Frank. And if you permit me, I'll just go back a little bit also, when we are tracing the historical evolution of this organization. Initially it was established really by China. China was the driving force as far as SCO is concerned, with support from Russia. So it did not really build up much traction because the body did not have much coherence. And what you mentioned also as far as Afghanistan is concerned, in the initial years it was discussed, but then it was set aside. Although in all the summits, the president of Afghanistan has always been an invitee. And whether it was Hamid Karzai or it is Ashraf Ghani, all summits they have been taking part in. Now, SCO, when it was established at that time, it was seen to be an Asian NATO, that it would be able to provide security. But it has really not been able to do anything of that sort. And what also was being mentioned as far as fighting against terrorism, it was basically to deal with the terror that China thought was acting against it, which is in Xinjiang and as far as the Uyghurs are concerned. So the words that they use are separatism, extremism, terrorism, basically to deal with the terror as they perceive in the Xinjiang area. Now, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, this has really come up. There was a contact group on Afghanistan that was set up, but it has been reactivated only now. And basically, even now, rather than providing some sort of a security architecture so that there is a stability and peace and security, basically what the countries are doing is trying to provide opportunities for economic development and growth. So, you mentioned that there are 3 countries that are directly involved. But I would say that all these Central Asian countries are also equally, if not more, keenly interested. Because, if you look at it, Tajikistan has a 1,300 kilometer long border with Afghanistan. You see that there is a great deal of terrorist churning. There have been a number of attacks that have taken place in Tajikistan. In Uzbekistan, there is, if I remember correctly, 137 kilometer border with Afghanistan. But there you have bodies like Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, there is Hizb ut-Tahrir. So, all these bodies are really lying low, that if Taliban comes there, if ISIS comes there, then of course they will also be able to rise up and sort of, create problems. That is why Russia is so very keen that it has established bases in Tajikistan as also in Kyrgyzstan, so that it can take this, if there are problems in Afghanistan, it can take care of that. And with the Turkmenistan is the third country which Afghanistan has a boundary with, about 800 kilometers or so. So there have been recently problems when Turkmen soldiers have also been killed. So I think peace and stability in Afghanistan is extremely crucial as far as the Central Asian countries are concerned. Of course, they do not have, in that sense, much of a say. Much of a say, it is basically Pakistan, which is looking at its strategic depth in Afghanistan. China has got involved and Russia has got involved, basically because it says that ISIS is coming into Afghanistan, and that could create problem for Central Asia as well as for Russia. That is why they are also having this dialogue and conversation with the Taliban. So I think to sum it up, it is all the countries are really keen and interested, but they have really not been able to find a way, because now on the 29th of February, we have this Qatar agreement between United States and Taliban. How that is going to go forward, I think they are still wading quite in the dark. They are still quite at sea as far as this is concerned.
Absolutely. All right. General, let me bring in another aspect, since the ambassador was speaking about Russia and how, all these countries are all so close to Russia and how this is really the backyard of Russia. Russia has played a very neutral role in all of this, despite what we've seen being happening between India and China. They have not really taken sides. They have dealt with several of these meetings very delicately and very daftly.
Frank, I think Russia is playing it cool because Russia is has got its own set of interests, so to say. As far as the India-China equation is concerned, I think Russia is going to maintain an equidistant poise between both of them because it has vital interest with both. One of the important things to remember is that there is a great deal of cooperation which is taking place now between China and Russia is going to do nothing to jeopardize that. At the same time, India's relations with Russia are very long-standing, and there is, in a sense, a very great deal of goodwill amongst the people of Russia for the people of India, and vice versa. Within India, you don't find any anti-Russian feeling per se. It just is not there. So there is a soft corner for Russia as far as the people-to-people contact is concerned. So I think that relationship is not something which Russia would like to really jeopardize. Now, coming down to the third aspect, this is where the problem really comes in, which Ambassador alluded to in great detail, is Afghanistan. Now, both Russia and China do not want, including Pakistan, do not really want America in Afghanistan. At the same time, they don't want the Americans to go because it is America which is doing the heavy lifting. And if the US gets away and stops doing that heavy lifting, then we know the chaos which is going to remain. So I think they are still in a dilemma as to how to deal with the particular situation. For India, when we are looking at this particular problem, I think there are three aspects which concern India. One is economic cooperation with the Central Asian countries. The second is getting transit route there, and the third is terrorism. Now, terrorism is not something which is going to be addressed in this particular forum. I'm absolutely certain about it because there are too many contradictions within the system. Somehow, if we can get the North-South trade corridor through, that of course is a long bet because we are really talking about linking Mumbai by sea with Iran, Chabahar. That is yes. From through Iran onto the Caspian Sea, yes. From the Caspian Sea onto Moscow, and then beyond. But with the unstable Afghanistan, I really don't see how that is going to progress as of now. Because if you are looking at energy supplies coming through Afghanistan and making use of a corridor of this nature, I really don't think that is going to work as of now. So for India, there are tremendous challenges. But having said that, I think it is still great that India is part of it. But otherwise, your voice will be muffled. And because we are there, we can ensure that even if we cannot promote our interests, at least we can ensure that our interests are not hurt. I think to that extent, the defense minister's statement there, especially I think a very important statement which he made, in my view, which was very important, was that international conventions must be observed. And I think that is a direct hit at China to tell them, listen, you are not following international conventions either on the land or in the South China Sea. And I think they need to get that act in order.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So, Professor, we've spoken about Afghanistan, we've spoken about China, we've spoken about Russia, we've spoken about the SCO as a whole. The Raksha Mantri also brought up another issue about what's happening in the Persian Gulf and how much of an impact it has really had. What do you make of the situation there? And, what's at stake for the SCO and what are its options?
Yeah, Persian Gulf is very important for India, for China, because Persian Gulf is the main source of energy for these two countries. Yeah. So India and China both are interested. And there are many fault lines in Persian Gulf. You take the example of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Russia, important member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they are competing with each other to capture the global oil market. Yeah. So they are, and then again the Persian Gulf, they have many fault lines here. It is religious fault lines, ethnic fault lines, sectarian fault lines, and many kind of geopolitical competition rivalry is going on in this region here. And Russia has a stake, China has a stake, India has a stake, and even the Central Asian republics who are integral part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. The Central Asian Republic, they have shared history, shared culture, shared religion. So this Central Asia cannot be separated from Persian Gulf. So they are closely linked with each other. So that is why this whole Persian Gulf is so important, and it is impacting Central Asia, it is impacting China, it is impacting India, and it is impacting Russia, and that too in a different ways here, because their interests are different here. So so India, China all wants that it should be stabilized so that their energy sources are not affected.
Okay, points taken. Time to get quick closing comments now from all my guests with the best way forward, starting first with you, Ambassador.
Let me put it this way, if you permit, Frank, just one comment on the Persian Gulf. Persian Gulf, of course, is very important for India. We know whether it is energy, whether it is diaspora, whether it is remittances. But if you look at the Central Asian countries, the 4 Central Asian countries who are members of SCO, and even Turkmenistan, which is not, for them, all of them are landlocked countries. Uzbekistan, in fact, is doubly landlocked. So the only way that they can get exit to the warm waters is through Iran. So getting stability, security in the Persian Gulf is extremely vital and critical as far as these countries are concerned. Of course, India, Pakistan, etc., China, Russia, they have their own access to warm waters. Now, coming on the next steps, I think this is, as we mentioned earlier, this is an excellent forum because it provides India with an opportunity to interact with our partners and our counterparts from, particularly from Central Asian countries. Here, of course, in this forum, it did provide the Defense Minister of India and Defense Minister of China also to have a dialogue and interaction. But it provides an opportunity because our Raksha Mantri also met Defense Minister of Kazakhstan, of Tajikistan, of Uzbekistan. When our External Affairs Minister goes to Moscow on the 10th, he will be able to meet his counterparts there. So although Central Asia is an extended neighborhood of India, but we are not really able to realize the full potential of our partnership because we do not have direct contiguity and direct access to these countries. And Shanghai Cooperation Organization provides us with that platform where we can interact with them. And even at the highest level, at the summit level, our Prime Minister can meet all the presidents as he has been doing, whether it was last year in Bishkek, in 2018 in Qingdao in China, in 2017 in Astana, and so on and so forth. This year, on the 30th of November, we are going to host the Council of the Heads of Government. That means the Prime Ministers of all countries of SCO are going to be visiting India. And I think that will be an opportunity to take our engagement with these countries and with the organization, whether it is in the area of trade, it is in the area of economy, it is in the area of technology, Afghanistan, terrorism, I think across the board. we will be able to take our relations forward. Thank you.
Right. All right, General.
Right. I'll be very brief because the ambassador actually summed up most of what I wanted to say. I just want to give 2 points, in my view. One, I do not think that the SCO per se is something where India can pursue its interests. It doesn't. It really. I can't see it that way. I think the biggest benefit SCO gives us is that at least we can ensure that our interests are not jeopardized. So it is much more in terms of preventing a situation from going worse rather than improving our situation, which I think on the economic connectivity and terrorism front, we can do it far better with the Persian Gulf and on a bilateral basis with most of the Central Asian countries.
Okay, all right. And Professor, close the show for us with your quick concluding remark.
Yeah, this Shanghai Cooperation is said to be the Asian NATO. So the prime concern, the first goal of the SCO is to ensure peace, stability, security, prosperity in this region. And here, all the members have to take care that their bilateral differences are not converted into disputes here. And mainly the bilateral differences between India and China, but we also not brush aside the differences between Russia and China also. Because on the issue of Vladivostok, till this date, China has not accepted Vladivostok as the part of Russia, though they have signed some border agreement. But even then, from time to time, China is raising the issue of Vladivostok because they claim this their origin. So you can't say that this Russia and China border has been resolved for all time in the future. So in Russia-China border issues there, India-China border issues there, many bilateral issues are there. And I think the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, if it has to succeed, so firstly, it has to focus on these bilateral issues and must resolve, because no regional organization can succeed unless and until the bilateral issues are not addressed.
Okay, all right. Ambassador, you wanted to make a point? Go ahead. Very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly, I want to make a point with due deference to the professor. This organization has no role in bilateral issues, and I'm happy that it has no role in bilateral issues. We use only the sidelines of the meeting, not the SCO. We use the sidelines of the meeting to have our conversation and to see how issues can be taken forward, as it was done in Astana. The words that Professor is mouthing about differences not turning into disputes. That was in Astana that Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, they spoke about it. So this forum has no role at all to play in bilateral disputes. And the second thing is what General said, in addition to putting our narrative on the table there, I think it has very many positives also, as I said, because it helps us to connect with Central Asian countries, which otherwise we would not have been able to. This provides us with a platform, this provides us with a forum, and we have been using that platform to the best effect. Thank you.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the SCO is a significant forum. It is huge in terms of area. It represents over 40% of the global population and over 23% of the global GDP. Fighting terror was one of the tenets of the SCO, and it is also mentioned in its charter, but it hasn't been taken on like it should be. Also, there are now new threats that need to be addressed with a strong hand. Russia, on the other hand, is very concerned about what is happening in the region and wants peace and tranquility in an area that it calls its backyard. It's important for India to be a part of the SCO so that we can ensure our voice is heard and our points of view are conveyed. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.